In this video, we'll discuss Poland's increased defense budget to nearly 5% of GDP and how Warsaw is preparing to confront Vladimir Putin's Russia. To understand why Poland is investing billions in Abrams tanks and F-35 fighters, we need to go back to the early 20th century, a time marked by a tumultuous relationship between Poland and Russia, with wars, invasions, partitions, and a deep-seated distrust that has marked and shaped Polish politics to this day. For 124 years, Poland was a nation divided and torn between Prussia, Austria, and Russia, re-emerging as a full nation only in 1918, after the end of the terrible First World War. But the Poles had very little time to celebrate with Russia, already part of the Soviet Union at the time, invading Polish territory the following year. Lenin, following the now well-known communist playbook, aimed to tear up the treaty he himself signed the previous year. All this to annex Polish territories to spread communism throughout Europe. The conflict escalated rapidly, and in 1920, Soviet forces advanced to the gates of Warsaw in an offensive that threatened to engulf the young Polish Republic. But then came the so-called miracle of the Vistula, with the Polish army counter-attacking and defeating the Soviets, who were forced to retreat by the Treaty of Riga signed in 1921, establishing borders that gave Poland territories in the east, sowing seeds of resentment at the Soviet leadership. This war was not just a territorial battle, it was an ideological clash between Polish nationalism and Soviet expansionism. Fast forward to 1939, and all this resentment turned back into aggression, first by Nazi Germany, which invaded Western Poland on September 1st, and then, on September 17th, with the Soviet invasion of Eastern Poland as a result of an alliance signed between Hitler and Stalin, which divided all of Eastern Europe between the dictators. Within weeks, the country was divided between Nazis and communists and ceased to exist once again, with the Nazis occupying the west and the communists occupying the east. Hundreds of thousands of Poles were deported to Siberia, and atrocities like the Katyn massacre, in which 22,000 Polish officers were executed by the Soviet NKVD, marked this era. After the war, Poland fell under Soviet rule, becoming a communist satellite of Moscow from 1945 until the late 1980s. The Soviet occupation included political repression, such as martial law in 1981 to crush Solidarity, the trade union movement led by Letesa. It was only with the collapse of the Soviet Union, which began in 1989, that Poland finally regained its full sovereignty, attempting to join NATO in 1999 and the European Union in 2004, completely turning its back on Moscow and everything Russia represents. These historical scars of repeated invasions, assassinations, deportations, and loss of independence explain why Poland views Russia as a genuinely existential threat. It's not paranoia, it's a history lesson. Fast forward to the present, and the Russian invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 has rekindled these historical fears. As Ukraine's direct neighbor, Poland watched in horror as Russian armor advanced, reminiscent of the invasions of 1919 and 1939. This accelerated a modernization process that had already been underway for years, but now with unprecedented urgency, with the Polish defense budget jumping from about 2.4% of GDP in 2021 to 4.7% in 2025. And for 2026, Defense Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz announced an increase to nearly 5%, a record of about $55 billion, making Poland NATO's largest defense investor in proportional terms, surpassing even the United States, with the focus being on replacing Soviet equipment with state-of-the-art Western systems. Poland acquired 32 F-35 fighters from the United States for $4.6 billion, with deliveries underway and options for 32 more. And recently, in August 2025, it signed a $3.8 billion deal to modernize its entire fleet of 48 F-16 fighters to the Block 72 standard. On the ground, the modernization is also impressive, with Poland purchasing 366 M1 Abrams armored vehicles from the United States, of which 250 are M1A2 CPV-3. But its major partner is South Korea, with several agreements providing for up to 1,000 K2 Black Panther armored vehicles, with 108 already ordered, more than 600 K95M howitzers, and 48 Fa-50 aircraft. And this isn't just a purchase, it's a technology transfer, with local production in Poland. On top of all this, the Poles are also acquiring even more HAR launchers and Patriot defenses, with this impressive acceleration directly due to the war in Ukraine. Poland donated Soviet equipment to Kyiv, mainly armored vehicles, with hundreds already delivered, and is now replacing them with Western equipment. Poland, which directly borders Ukraine and Belarus, fears a catastrophic scenario, a Ukrainian defeat that would lead to the imposition of a Russian puppet state similar to Alexander Lukashenko's Belarus. Minsk is already seen as a Kremlin puppet used for hybrid attacks, such as the 2021-2022 migration crisis. Therefore, if Ukraine falls, Poland would be trapped on two hostile flanks, facilitating a Russian invasion, as happened in 1919 and 1939. Polish leaders such as President Andrzej Duda have declared that their foreign policy aims at the strategic defeat of Russia in Ukraine. And in 2025, with the war ongoing, Warsaw has been preparing civilians for war, increasing the US military presence, and fortifying its borders. The goal is to increase the military contingent by hundreds of thousands of soldiers, create large minefields along the border with Russia and Belarus, and prepare as best as possible for what they see as a serious and very real threat posed by Vladimir Putin. A Ukraine defeated by Russia would put Poland on the front line. And if that happens, the Poles don't want to be caught off guard. And as has become quite clear here, all of this isn't paranoia or mere anti-Russian sentiment. It's a history lesson of centuries of Russian pressure and oppression that has instilled in Poles a sense of self-preservation against the threat coming from the East.